Welcome to the UpSet podcast. Tonight we are talking about gambling. Is it a sin? Coming up next. Good evening once again. Welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We are so happy that you joined us on this Sunday. Go ahead right now and share this because it's going to be a great discussion. And I know it's going to be a great discussion because I have some wonderful people with me today. Hey, guys.
Hey,
Happy
Sunday. Happy Sunday, everyone.
Happy Sunday. Yes, indeed. I feel whenever I say that on a day like today, I feel prophetic.
Yes. Yeah, doesn't it?
Sunday.
How was everyone's week?
Ah,
it was
great.
Awesome.
So busy.
Oh.
Uh,
What'd you say,
May's
Marlene?
around the corner.
I said my week was so busy. Goodness.
Busy?
Crazy.
Yeah. April's a busy month for me.
You're in school too, aren't you, Marlena?
Oh yes.
Wow.
Busy
Deadlines.
right now.
Yeah.
Next year I'm graduating this time.
All right.
You'll be Dr. Marlena then, right?
I shall be. The only person that has to call me that is you, just because of how you treat me.
I'm so glad I'm retired because with all these doctorates, I feel so dumb.
No way.
Oh, Charlie, you got an honorary doctorate.
Yeah, that's the only way
Say
I'm gonna
words
get
I
one.
don't even know. What is that? I haven't even heard of it.
Because I make them up.
And yeah, no one else
I
can
mean-
verify, right?
I'm sure just like I don't see that word there.
So what's been catching you guys' eyes in the news? Anything popping out?
I mean, Israel retaliated against Iran.
I
Yeah.
saw
Mhm.
that. Oh
I saw
my
that.
goodness.
Yeah.
It's one person said, Keenan, that it, if everybody adheres to the rule of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, we're all blind and toothless, and
Mhm.
it appears that we have locked into the idea that we must hit back, and
Yep.
Israel is turning itself into a pariah before the nations now.
Yeah.
With its,
Really sad to see. Really sad to see. So I don't make it a point to really follow Trump news. But I just click on something this week where he was given an interview after the court, and he had all those papers in his hands. Did you guys see that? He was saying how much of a farce this was, and all of the news channels are saying it's a farce, and he's just flipping through the papers and saying, this doesn't make sense, and Joe Biden is the one that should be prosecuted. It was just so funny to me because, I was first introduced to Trump through the reality show. Why am I?
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice, right? And I really actually liked the show, and so when I saw him there with all those papers, it took me back to the reality TV type stunts where they come and they have their receipts of what people said throughout the season, and I was like, there he is, just like making those sets, flipping through, and only to find
multiple copies of the same document.
Exactly.
It
Only
was
to
the
find
same picture on the end.
I just can't believe sometimes that this is real. Like, this is real. Like, it's hard to wrap my mind around it because it just seems like such folly when I look at it. But it's very much where we are.
And not to be self-promoting, but I write for Message, and I wrote an article that appears, I think, in this week's newsletter for Message about, people are asking the question, did God want Donald Trump in the presidency? Because, it's like in Romans, it says that all authority is established by God. And so I wrote about it, and I'm interested to see how people will respond to it about the appointment of Donald Trump. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, and
Yeah.
but the saddest part is that we're in a country now where you can't disagree. I would say a world, because Russia's like that too, and many of the authoritarian countries, that if you disagree with anything, you are an enemy. And
Mhm.
those witnesses, I mean, that are called to the jury, I mean, just wanting to get their names out so that retaliation can be made against them. That's Is very sad and dangerous. You can't, really serve because, you're at danger of your life. And could you
Yeah.
imagine one of us preachers, we are preaching all the time, we're all over, streaming everywhere, and we get called to a jury and your life could be at stake. Isn't that sad?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm gonna say what I want to say. I'm not afraid of it. I want people to know my point of view, and if they don't like it, they can just contact me, Patrick Graham.
Sure, he's gonna appreciate that.
So I saw a story. Speaking of paper trails, Montgomery County in Maryland, 18-year-old high school student was arrested and found with a 120-page detailed document with plans to shoot up a school.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's crazy. It's like these are the times we're living in where, whether it was fiction or he really intended to do it, it's crazy.
I'm glad they caught it at that stage of the planning stage, because usually it's after the fact and they find this manifesto or whatever.
And according to the young man, he said he did it because he wanted to be like popular. And I'm like,
Mm.
they say. Everybody's looking for their name to be known, even if it's like,
I mean, but can we really fault young people when, as Keenan said earlier, that's how nations act? I mean, if you offend me, I'm going to shoot you up. I'm going to, shoot everything that I can see. And it appears that we are just following form, and that is, if I am offended, I have the right to overkill. And we live in a time where revenge is more important than justice, and something has to be done, or we're just going to condemn ourselves to become an abattoir of our own anger.
Mercy.
It seems to be what it is.
Really? Okay, Marlene.
Go ahead, Dr. Keenan. Go ahead, buddy.
No, I was just going to say what really can be done. I mean, I don't see things getting any better. I really don't. Just the violence is increasing and increasing. I mean, outside of the second coming, divine intervention, I don't see it.
Yeah. Statistically, I know they talk about, some of the violence being lessened. However, the attitudes of people, the violent natures are increasing. When you are against your family over a politician that you never met, I mean, that's terrible when you no longer communicate with each other, or even with church stuff. You get mad at somebody in church and then you become hostile to them.
Yep.
I mean, it's like that spirit is like an evil spirit just throughout the nations, that you can no longer disagree and see things differently and be friendly at each other.
Yeah. It's not even safe to honk at somebody else anymore because they can pull out a gun.
Right.
People are just
Nor
so on
flash
edge.
them, right?
angry.
Nor flash. Yeah. Even flashing.
The world in which we live. Help us, Lord. Help us.
Indeed.
All right. And speaking of help us, Sally's going to lead us in a discussion on a topic that I think will be very interesting. I'm curious to see how we all feel about this one, as well as our audience. So without further ado, Tally.
Well, as always, we want to welcome everybody to the UpSet podcast, where the brightest minds and the broadest hearts come together with the greatest of articulation to help us to parse through some of the issues of the day. And speaking of parsing through some of the issues of the day, we just really feel that we can roll the dice, and you bet that we're going to come up with something that you are going to enjoy and you're going to bet your life. We're going to talk about gambling today. Is this something that you should chance? Gambling. You bet your life, should you chance it? Now, this is something that everybody knows about, gambling. At least everybody thinks that they know about it and how they feel about it. And we're going to examine that a little bit. And I won't be too long before you. Like Kim Kardashian said to her third husband, I'm not going to hold you long. So yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. But let's take a look at this thing called gambling, and let's define it a little bit before we go any further. Let's ask ourselves a few questions. What is gambling? Well, it comes from an Old English word, gamel, or gambling, which means basically to play, to be joyful and mirthful in entertainment. You know, the word that it leaves with us is the word game, to play, gambling. But when it comes to what we're talking about today, gambling has taken a different term. And the Seventh-day Adventist website calls gambling any paid game of chance. That's what they refer to it as, a paid game of chance. And I want to thank Pat Graham for sending that to me just last night. But it has to be a little bit more than that. Gambling is more than simply a paid game of chance. And I found one of the better working definitions to be this. Anytime you stake something of value with a conscious sense of risk and a hope of gaining on the outcome of an event, that becomes gambling. In other words, something of value that you have that you're willing to put at risk with a conscious idea or hope that you're going to gain something based upon the outcome of some event, whatever that event might be. It doesn't have to be a game. You could be gambling at a fishing competition, but it is risk, a conscious sense of hope or gain with something that you value at stake, with the outcome of an event being the thing that determines how it will go. And we'll look at gambling that way. Now, there's a good reason to consider this gambling thing, and that is this. Gambling takes a huge amount of economic power and resource out of our country. $117 billion in the first 3 quarters of 2023 on lotteries alone. Now, these are just lotteries, $117 billion. We're talking about more than some nations have in their entire budget. But chew on that for a moment and think about this, that over $130 billion in the same period of last year, the first 3 quarters of the year, we're talking about going through to September, $130 billion on sports betting. So add up $117 billion on lotteries, $130 billion on sports betting, and you've got some real money right there. We're getting close now to $1/3 trillion. But that's only the beginning of sorrows, folks, because you got to tack on to that the biggest gambling industry that the world has ever seen, and that is casinos. In the first 3 quarters of 2023, we spent $417 billion in casinos. That is almost $500 billion right there alone. $117 billion on lotteries, $130 billion on sports, $417 billion in the casinos that dot this nation. We're only talking about the United States of America now. And many of these casinos are on lands that are owned by indigenous people, Native Americans. $500 trillion last year on casinos. Now, the one good thing about the 3 categories I've just shown you is that all of these gambling enterprises at least return some revenue to the people in the form of taxes. But folks, there are other gambling enterprises and operations that are out there that give no taxes back at all. These are the illegal gambling enterprises. And last year, $511 billion was spent in illegal enterprises that we can measure. Illegal things like the numbers that you play, or the crap game that you see down the street, or some of these other late night activities in the back of bars. Over $500 billion illegally spent that no one else benefits from except for the gangsters who organize these events. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not something that's in the shadows now. We recognize that as many as 6.2 Americans, which amounts to 20 million people, are involved in gambling in a problem way. Over 60% of all Americans gamble in some way or another. And that includes 750,000 young people who are problem gamblers. 750,000 young folks between the ages of 14 and 21. This is an issue that we need to get our arms around, and we ought to do it real quick. Now, this is gambling from an emotional, psychological, behavioral perspective. The real question that people are asking is, where does this come from? Why do people gamble? Well, if you would believe it, gambling, they say, started off in front of a tree in a garden where a wonderful man by the name of Adam and his lovely wife named Eve, in the midst of absolute delight, found themselves being spoken to by a slick talking serpent who promised them something if they were willing to put something else at risk. And he said to them, don't you realize that the perfection that you want, that the wholeness that you desire, you can have it all right now simply by eating the fruit that you were told not to eat. If you put that relationship with God at risk, you'll take a shortcut to the success that you're looking for. And they bit, pun fully intended. They took the bet. They bet their life. They gambled, and they lost, and we lost with them. I thought that snake really looked like he was trying to sell him a little something there. When you look at gambling from a theological perspective, especially from this paradigm that we share about the Garden of Eden, you realize that gambling is more than simply how much money you bet or the activity. It is based on certain emotional mindsets and philosophy. Number one, it's a shortcut to some desired end. Number two, it is motivated by either greed or lust or both. A shortcut motivated by greed or some inordinate desire. And then number three, and this is the most important thing, it places at risk resources and relationships. A shortcut motivated by greed or lust, placing at risk either resources or relationship. And finally and ultimately, it inclines a person towards distrusting their God. Now, this has nothing to do with money. It's any activity that is giving you a shortcut to some desired end that is motivated by either greed and something that you want that you don't have to have, or lust, some inordinate desire that fulfills some inner appetite. It places at risk your resources and or your relationships. And at the end of the day, it says to you, you really don't have to trust God in this thing. That is what we're getting at when we talk about gambling. And the thing about it, ladies and gentlemen, is that it is everywhere now. Gambling is everywhere. You can find gambling, of course, in casinos, or you can find it at the racetrack. If you look around, there's sports betting everywhere, or there's sweepstakes and bingos. It's at your store. You can find it on the street. You can even find it, ladies and gentlemen, in your churches. It is every single place. Now, in conclusion, it begs certain questions. Gambling is everywhere. It can be an innocent activity. But it's there, and most Americans are involved in it, and we are spending trillions of dollars annually in it. So it begs certain questions. Question number one that it begs is it a sin? Is gambling in and of itself a sin? Now, after you ask that question, you have to ask the question, that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has stated they are opposed to, and that is, they say, and it's on the website, that they will not take money from a gambler. And we have to ask, is it okay to accept offerings gained from gambling? I remember one pastor down south preached against gambling. He said that gambling is a sin and it's ill-gotten gain. And as he was preaching, one of the local gamblers came in and put $20,000 right on the communion table in front of the pastor. And the guy said, "Reverend, I know that I've been wrong, but I'm trying to get right. I won a whole lot of money gambling and I want to give some of it to the Lord." And he put the money down there and walked out of the church. And the old sister in front of the church in the front pew said, "Pastor, we can't take that money. That money is tainted money." And the pastor said, "Yes, you're right. Taint enough of it," and took it and put it right in the offering plate. The question is asked, can we accept money if it is the ill-gotten gains of gambling? And last but not least, are there different degrees of acceptability when it comes to gambling? For example, you're putting resources at risk when you play the stock market. Every person on this website, all of these lovely faces that you see here being paid by the conference, are benefiting to money that is being put at risk with hopes of gain on a chance, because the monies that we have in this denomination are invested in the stock market. I know that there are pastors who do day investing. Some of you may know pastors who do play the day markets where you are doing the penny stocks on a day-to-day basis. Is that acceptable? If Pastor Keenan and I are watching a basketball game, and I say to Keenan, I say, "Hey, listen, man, I bet you a lunch that the 76ers are going to beat the New York Knicks," because, certain New York people might like the New York Knicks because they don't know any better. They need prayer. And I say, "I bet you a lunch." And he said, "All right, you're on." Are we in sin because we made that bet? Are there certain degrees that are acceptable when it comes to gambling? These are the kind of questions. Is it a sin? Is it acceptable to accept money from people who gamble? And are there degrees of acceptability? These are hard questions that we have to ask. But the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, hard questions come before this group on a regular basis. But because of the depth of the probity of our reflection and consideration, we're able to unravel the hard questions and give you the answers that will allow you to live peacefully before men and before God. And we turn these hard questions over now to the brightest of minds and the purest of hearts, to all of our UpSet podcast members. And to them I ask, what say you one? What say you all about this gambling issue?
Well, that was good, Tally. Go ahead, GP. I see you.
No, wonderful intro. My only question is, maybe Keenan can help with this. Is gambling in the DSM-5 as a disorder?
Gambling itself? That's a good question to have one right here.
Like an addiction.
If it falls under addiction, maybe.
There's an addiction.
Right.
I don't know, not gambling itself.
That's
I don't think that itself is a disorder.
Yeah, before we go further, we might want to explain what a DSM-5 is there, GP.
I'll let Keenan do that.
well, basically, it's like the psychiatrist's Bible in a sense. It has all the disorders in there. In order to diagnose somebody for a mental disorder, they have to meet certain requirements, and it has to be in that DSM. If they don't meet those requirements, then you can't diagnose them as having ADHD, depression, those type of things. So it has to be listed there.
So is that to say then, Dr. Keenan, that
not a doctor yet?
Okay, well, is that to say that psychologist Keenan, that some gambling might be okay?
That's a great question. Is some gambling? Now, according to your definition, putting stuff at risk, it depends on what that risk is. So I can't, you know what? I can't answer that question. I'm not sure. Because you walk outside, that's a gamble. So it depends on how you want to, which route you want to go. So
Well, I mean, in this conversation, what we're using as a definition for gambling is the conscious putting at risk of resources and realizing that it is dependent upon some event that you are monitoring. Walking outside is not an event that you're monitoring.
Okay. Since you pushed me now, if you're doing it over and over again and you cannot stop, then they have
No, I'm
gamblers.
not saying that you can't stop. I'm just saying, just like you might go out and play a game of basketball, you might decide, like one of our pastors here, you might decide to go to Las Vegas and, if you decide to pull a handle or two, just for the fun of it. Is that okay?
Yeah, from a psychological. Is that what you're asking me?
Because if you answer wrong, that might be the only job you have.
Like, do you need to talk to somebody? If that's what no, I don't know if I can answer that. But if you're doing it too much, yes, they have Gamblers Anonymous is a serious thing. People, it's one of those things where like they just can't stop. It's composed. They just have to do it, and it really just takes over everything, their whole being. So they have a bunch of programs to help people to stop gambling. And when I was in the military, when I was in the Navy, I had a guy that he worked in my department rather, and he could not stop gambling. He got into some serious trouble with the military because of that. I mean, when he was up, but he was down, it was down. Bad.
Yeah.
Really bad.
It's kind of like that basketball player this week, right?
The one who was kicked
out of the NBA forever. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope I didn't start us off on the wrong foot, but I want to ask this question to help us get started in the right way. Has anyone ever purchased a lotto ticket? I don't care how little the amount was. Have you ever purchased one?
And you expect us to answer you right here, right now, right?
I bought one when I was a teenager. Yeah, I was 18. I did it because I'd never done it before. I was like, let me just do it. Yeah, I didn't win anything. No, I scratched it. Didn't win anything.
That's my last dollar I'll ever spend. Right? No, I've never bought. I don't like to lose. But back to what Tally was saying, certainly not my dollar. Is gambling a sin? And in course, as we research on gambling, is not stated as a sin in the Bible, but the consequences that comes behind it, the attitude changes, the lack of trusting in God, the lust, is those things that cause it to be a sin. But I do want to address monies that are put in church. Should you not accept it? I've been in this conversation several times. And money is not a person or a thing that can choose to be a sin. It's how the person uses the money. So if one gives monies to the church and they're used appropriately, how can it be for a dirty reason? The scripture that does says that the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. So how can it be wrong? We don't know the exchange of money. When you go to the store, you don't know if it's gambling money that's put in your hands, right? And people says, well, it's when you do know. All right. Well, if that person used it for dirty means, you're going to use it for a blessing. The money, the dollar, the paper itself, it's not a conscience. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that reminds me, I was watching a show once, and there was a pastor who had a relationship with the drug dealers in the neighborhood. They almost had a little deal in terms of, you let us do what we have to do, and in return, we will compensate the church. So the church was almost like a safe haven for these drug dealers to operate without interference from the church. And of course, the church was benefiting in that, the members weren't necessarily aware that this is the arrangement that the pastor had. So ministry was blossoming, great things were happening. But on the other side of it, when you really pull back the layers, what the pastor was doing, even though the money was being used for good, that relationship and encouraging, almost relying on the drug money for the ministry, I think is where that issue lies. But in that instance that Tally gave of an incident where someone is just donating it, there's no like affiliation with the church, accepting the behavior, condoning the behavior, or even working alongside it and saying, bring us some next week type of behavior. I think that's a distinction. But I agree that, you know, if the money came from inappropriate means, that doesn't mean it can't still be used for some good.
So are you saying, Tasha, that if a gambler came and said, I won this money at the racetrack and I am giving it to the church, you're saying that the church should accept the money? And there was silence in heaven for the space of
I'm thinking about that because I do believe sometimes people use that to justify what they're doing. Like they've done something that they may not feel is ethical, or maybe, and so they feel like if I give some of the money to the church, that washes this thing clean. And I'm pausing because you don't want to encourage that person to continue down that path because you're accepting it, and they feel like, okay, this is how I get penance for this thing. I do it, I give some of the church, it's all right.
Pastor Novella.
Back to the point. Oh, go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I want some Kashi wisdom here this morning, this evening.
Well, when
if your elder came and said, I won, you know, $50,000 in the lottery and I want to give half of it to the church, you would say,
well, I would say thank you. I honestly would. Like, I'm being for real. Like, I would say, great, let's put this money towards this, that, and the third, especially in outreach, something that deals with, you know, helping people who are struggling. But then I would say, let us sit down and have a conversation about.
After you take the money, right?
It would be in one conversation about it, because seriously, it'll now open up the door for me to ask him about this. Like, I didn't know this is something you did. You know, how long have you been doing this? You know, whatever. And then really start to drill down on, listen, this money is going to be used for God's stuff. Like Marlena said, you know, like the money's going to be used for God's stuff. But we don't ever want to get to the point where you're being a bad steward, or you have, you know, gambled and now you lost and you have nothing. So let's stop while we're ahead. Right?
While we're ahead.
Let's stop now and just be a good steward of what you've won. Like, I think really that's what I would say. Like, you've won this, you donated this part, you clearly have a lot at home. Why don't we just be a good steward of that? Stop now and just, you know, that's what I would do. That's what I think.
May I read something before we go ahead? And I just want to share this with you. This is from the Seventh-day Adventist church website, an official statement from the church. And it says this, and then I'll yield to Pastor Marlena. Quote, it says, the Seventh-day Adventist Church rejects gambling as defined above and will not solicit nor accept funding that is derived from gambling. Will not solicit nor accept funding. What do you say to that, Pastor Marlena? Or Pastor Novella, either one?
If you don't mind, the truth is, we don't know if a lot of the funds have been received by gambling.
No, I'm saying that he told you that.
No, but I'm saying outside of what my elder or whomever has said. Like, if you think about it in a general moment where people have Cash App, the church offering, placed offering in the plate, like, you don't know if it's gamble money, drug money, or whatever.
I mean, don't ask, don't tell, huh?
Well, kind of. And so with the elder, I mean, truthfully, that statement is that statement. And I get it that it's in the website or whatever. I just don't think that
they ain't pastoring no churches.
Right. And I don't think that, honestly, if someone wants to give money to the church, it's going to open up a conversation for me and that person To be
Amen.
like, listen, like you ahead right now, but that doesn't mean you will stay ahead. Let us now do it as God desires. But we're gonna put this money towards the use of God, you know.
Well,
And I
That's
think
what I think personally.
And Tal, you mentioned how like the casinos and a lot of those other organizations, they
Back.
give money back. Like part of when they're
taxes. Yeah.
every time they're building something, I mean, that's what they use to promote. Yes, we need this casino because it can help this, and that.
I mean, the state lotteries are pretty much
scholarships.
underwrite senior citizen stuff. Like, trust me,
Schools.
yeah. So.
Yeah. May I say something? So it is gambling disorder is in the DSM-5. I just looked it up. It is characterized by persistent and recurrent problematic gambling behavior that leads to significant distress or impairment.
Oh, okay.
So it is in the DSM-5. And I just want to say what Novella said, just piggybacking off Novella. I know of a pastor who was preaching on Sabbath, Sabbath. Give it away. He told a story where he had somebody come to the church. It was a young lady. She grew up in the neighborhood. Her neighbors was Adventists. She was not Adventist. Her neighbors was Adventist. And she wanted to start going to church. So she told her boyfriend who sold drugs, we need to start going to church. But I want to go on Saturday because my neighbors who were so nice, they went on Saturday, on the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
So she started going because of her neighbors. So she went to the church and it was time to give offering. The offering came around and she looked at her boyfriend. She said, put something in the plate. And he was like, what? And she said, just put money in the plate. So he took out a knot of money and put it in the offering plate. Ironically, he made a bunch of money that week selling drugs. So he's like, what is this? So they went back to church the next week. So when the offering plate came around, what do you think he did? He took out another knot of money and put it in the offering plate. And this kept happening. He's making
ain't
more.
The Lord good? Ain't the Lord good?
He's blessing me right now.
So watch this now. Talk about a conversation, like Pastor Novella said. Eventually, he got convicted. He went to speak to the pastor. He told him what he was doing. Right? He wanted to give his life to Christ. So he stopped selling drugs and he went ahead and became a missionary.
Did he go into the Navy and become a minister in Virginia?
That was the preacher who received the money.
That was a good one. But no, he became a missionary. So I just want to say, just taking that drug money, I'm not advocating for it, but I just thought it was interesting.
It opens a conversation. You don't know where. Number one, the money will be used for good. That's hands down. And opening the conversation with the person and helping them see the dangers of gambling. So the slide that Tally had up that talked about, trying to take a shortcut or, and the last part said it leads to a distrust in God. I could see that part building because say somebody continues to gamble, scratch offs or slots or whatever, and they're winning. Listen, God ain't doing this for me. I got this. Like that type of thing can start to build, which is so cool. Why you used the example of Adam and Eve to begin to say the real gambling started there. You know what I mean? And it's not that you can't be a rich person and trust God. That's crazy to think that, the Lord progresses people all the time. People are rich and faithful, whatever. But there's something about the how and the mindset that alters a person.
And I just want to say, I had a conversation with a lady one day about this, and I said, that I would take the money because everything belongs to God, right? And it's how we use the money. If someone used it for evil I'm not talking about any crooked situation like what Tosh was talking about, a drug dealer, pastor combination deal. But if someone, because of it being paper is how you use the money, right? And I know she thought I was a crooked pastor, but I was trying to share. Look at me, was like, I wanted to share with her that you know, that purpose is you're not taking monies that were used for sin, but we're all sinners, right? We've all have sinned. We might not have sinned with the use of money, but we all sinners.
So you would take the money.
Money is transferred. If someone came and they gave a donation, most of the time people don't tell you why they're giving the donation. They just give the donation.
Oh, hold on. President Ted Wilson would like to speak to you.
I just, first of all, okay.
Yeah, they're talking about it right now, President.
Listen, I didn't put any money up. I'm not gambling the church. Somebody gave
benefited from it, right?
Yeah, to be used for, you know, the ministry. We're going to use it for good. I'm not going out telling the guy, hey, can you keep rolling the dice and bringing the church more money, right?
Well, yeah, one of them is named Novella, the other one's named Marlena. Yeah. And the head of our Department of Ministry started it off, Mr. President, saying she don't care what you put on that website. Yeah, I'll tell her. Sure. Yeah, because you know me, I love loyalty to the church.
But hey, listen, it ain't in the Bible, right? It's not in the Bible. It's the things that come with it, right?
Well, those stories you got to tell yourself, Marlene. I'm with you.
I was going to say
I'm
that
glad you're with me.
what Marlena just said about it's not in the Bible. When Tally read about the website said, I was like, the website, and then I was going to say the Bible doesn't say that, you know. But it's true. The Bible does not say thou shalt not mingle thy money in the church with whatever. You know, it doesn't say that. Now, common sense would tell you what Tasha was talking about, what the pastor did. Oh, you could sell your drugs. We'll keep quiet. Just filter the money in here. That's fine. That is so wrong because you are legit condoning the behavior. You keep doing it. Okay, cool. You won't cause any trouble and we'll keep getting money. Like, but where is the conversation? So what we've been saying about the gambling part was like, the conversation's going to happen immediately. Thank you for this donation, but let us sit down and talk, you know, please.
Novella says you need to stop this 300, gambling like 400. And I'm telling you, don't become the 800.
No, but the powerful point is what Keenan said about the story he shared, that change and that conviction happened. Now, the pastor didn't know, so the pastor wasn't able to have a conversation and try to help them through. But the Spirit of the Lord did that for that person by putting their money towards the Lord. For me, that's it. You have put it towards the Lord.
He was tithing on his income.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. We keep saying would the church accept it. Now that makes me want to know, would you individually accept it if someone wanted
to bless you?
And I didn't gamble with my money.
Yeah, and they you know that they are involved in, you know,
and it ain't a sin in the Bible.
I want to bless you.
You mean if they walk by you and say, "Hey, Pastor, you dropped something"? Oh, that's yours.
My brother told me if he ever won the lottery, he'll pay my house off. You think I said, "Oh, I don't want that dirty money"?
I think I would.
I am learning a lot.
I think I would legit approach it the same way as if someone brought it to the church. No matter what, it's going to yield a conversation. I'm going to say, listen, thank you so much for this.
You need to stop this gift 300 gambling because it's going to 500. It's going to send you to the 800. What else you got?
No. Yeah. Like legit, like if someone was like, listen, Smith,
let's talk about what the Bible says.
I want to give you this 50,000. I played the lottery and I won. I'm going to say thank you. Like, honestly, this is going to go right. Wherever I'm going to put it, wherever the Lord says it's going to go right. But I'm going to say, let me talk to you. The same conversation that we talked about before is the same one I would have again outside of the church. But I'd be like, stop scratching, stop playing. Like, you don't want to end up.
Stop that 300 scratching. You 400 stop scratching.
So is it a sin to pray that a winning lotto ticket just fall on top of your car and the windshield? Is that a sin?
It's not. It is.
I wouldn't be praying for it.
Because that's what I heard somebody say. Let me say this. When I was in the military back again, I was giving this young man a Bible study. And we got on the subject of gambling. And I was telling him, no, you can't gamble. That's wrong. You can't gamble. And it was a PK, another guy in the military. He overheard us. He said, no, you're wrong. He's talking to me. He said, gambling is not a sin. That's not in the Bible. And I was like, whoa, nah, it's wrong to say you can't gamble. And then I thought about it. I said, gambling itself is not a sin, but is what it can lead to. But he really challenged me on that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Gambling
what
itself.
it can lead to, or what leads you to it.
Yeah,
So-
I was gonna say.
Now,
what
but
about-
I'm going to ask a question about gambling in the Bible, because I'm reading from Proverbs chapter 18, verse 18, and it mentions a practice that we all know about in the Bible. It says, casting lots settles disputes and keeps strong opponents apart. The casting of lots, which is clearly about chance, drawing lots. You don't know who's going to get it. I mean, look, we got a 12th apostle out of the casting of lots. And that appears to be kind of like a gamble. Don't you guys think so? So is the Bible encouraging in some instances, games of chance? Or
Well,
And
that
there
would
was
be
silence.
comparison. That would be comparison to our 401ks and our other retirement plans that we were speaking of earlier. Because
It's a little different. I mean, because there's absolutely
I'm talking about
random.
I'm talking about the agreement of it. Like that was a strategy that they use to make
Decision-making.
decisions, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm speaking of the 401k because you spoke of that being a
Mhm.
lottery, a form of gambling, right? So I was trying to say that those were necessary, to obtain something that you need.
But the
And
casting of lots is totally and absolutely random. When Mattathias became the 12th apostle in the absence of Judas, I mean, there was no resume, there was no interview process, and then
You mean
incidentally, he rapidly disappeared after he was selected. We never heard about him again.
Take it.
Rapidly.
Either that or he just was the wrong guy. But
You left ministry.
I mean, but does the Bible kind of encourage then the idea of chance and play when it talks about casting lots is a great way to end quarrels and decide things, because it's a gamble.
Was that before Pentecost or after the Holy
That was
Spirit fell on?
a good question. spoken like a New York offering giver there.
There was no monetary gain in that. So I guess just the issue of chance.
Or
You take a chance when you get married. Take a
equitable
chance.
decision making.
Mercy.
What about like investments and day trading? Is that considered gambling, or is that considered wise investing? Because those are trends that you follow and you put in here, pull out there, put in there based upon these influxes and trends and whatnot. So, I mean, I know people who are really, really doing well. They have their regular jobs, and then, they also put in here and track it and everything. And so I don't know, like,
I don't see it. I don't see that as gambling in and of itself, but I can see how it can lead to the same destructive tendencies as anything that you become addicted to. Because in terms of investing, those who, study investing and know it, for instance, like, putting in your money and guaranteed a 7% return over time, that has been proven. To me, that's not a gamble, because that history has shown that happens. You have facts. It's not necessarily a risk per se, because if it is a risk, it's an educated risk that there will be ebbs and flows in the market if you follow this practice. Now, if you're in there day trading and every day you're in it and you can't concentrate on anything else because, oh no, this has gone down, let me go get this. To me, that becomes that distrust in God, and I have to manage every little piece of my life to make sure that I'm financially secure. Whereas when you invest, you put the money aside, you let it do its job. You don't even think about it. It's growing, and you're not disrupting your everyday life. Whatever you invest, you're doing it, with some matter of knowing that this is what we can put aside from our account and still function. But what happens with gambling and other things is people will spend their whole paychecks this stuff, leaving their family without shelter, without food, without clothing. To me, that's where it becomes, okay, this is taking over your life instead of adding to your life.
Yeah, I think there are some parts of it that are wise. Like we're talking about, say, day trading or other parts of investments, like you said, yielding X amount of percent in return. I think that those are the things that's like, that has wisdom in it. It makes me think about the those in the Bible who received X amount of talents, who got one, got this, got that. And I'm going to hide mine in the sand, make sure I don't lose my one. And then the other person is like, I'm going out there. I'm going to see how I can multiply this thing, And so I want to take what I have and see where I can multiply it, When someone's a landlord, right? Marlena said marriage is a gamble, right? Being a landlord is a gamble, right? You buy multiple houses. You say, okay, I'm going to rent this one out. You don't know if your renter is going to be horrible. They're going to mash up your place, damage it, whatever the case may be. Everything has a sense of risk or gamble, but I think it is which one is wise, which one has more profitability, and which one kind of leads you down a path of all that stuff we've talked about. That's what I think.
I don't have a problem saying that day trading is gambling. It is, but you can exercise wisdom in that. It's a type of gambling. I think the problem comes, like everyone has said, when you become addicted to the possibility of profit, which is not bad. Profit is not bad.
Or even winning, GP, like you win and then you want more. Yeah,
exactly.
I'll
breed. Go ahead.
And I turn now to our psychologist friend. In doing this research, I was brought back to some research I'd done earlier in my years of ministry, and that is the fact that the way our brains are wired, we are triggered. We are wired to be drawn to opportunities for winning. The brain rewards itself. There's something, a part of the brain, the amygdala, the limbic system, that is triggered when we win something or we see an opportunity to win. And that is why gambling is a worldwide phenomenon. The idea of winning is attractive to us. So it appears that we're saying that we accept the fact that the lure and the enticement of gambling is natural. And some of it seems that these pastors who are part of the Allegheny East Conference and these departmentally, I'm retired, incidentally, everyone, but that these pastors are saying that some level of participation with gambling seems to be okay. Am I hearing you all right?
You're correct.
I
correct.
was going to say, I didn't participate in the gambling.
We all gamble in some way, shape, or form.
Listen, we've said that, there's no scripture that says thou shalt not gamble in the Bible. I think we've all made that.
No scripture says thou shalt not smoke.
However, there are principles in the Bible that guide our actions, right? There are things that we read in the Bible that lets us know whether or not we should be engaging in certain activities. And also, when we think about sin, its intent is to lead us away from God. The intent is to separate us. So if we're looking at any activity, whether it's gambling, drinking, anything that we engage in, and we see that it is causing some type of severance in our relationship with God, or we're leaning more towards that than our relationship with God, I think that is a great barometer to help us decide whether this is something that we should engage in. So if you are gambling and you find yourself being more concerned about how you can get that next $10 so you can go back to the casino instead of how can I dive more into my word, how can I build my relationship with Christ, that's an issue. And I think when we look at it from what is my intent, if I like gambling, what am I really doing? We can say, oh, it's just for fun. Oh, I just want to see. But when we really dig a little deeper into our intent for doing things, that is what's going to guide us as to whether or not we should be doing it. I think that's how we answer that question without trying to be so specific about, is this thing it? Is this thing that? Because it's futile to do it that way.
I was going to say that dopamine hit, as Tally was talking about, is a hit. And you get that hit, it's addictive. And now you keep coming back for that hit, over and over again. So sometimes with some people, it's not even so much the money, it's the thrill of winning. Oh, yeah. They're addicted to.
And all sorts of people of different financial brackets gamble. Rich people.
Oh, yeah.
Middle class, lower class, But I must be honest, what really I guess hurts is when I see really lower financial class persons gamble. And they will buy up like 5, 6, 7, 10 tickets at one time, hoping for the best, but they win nothing, you know, and they've put out however much it costs to buy those tickets. But now you've just decreased your bus fare. You've now decreased, you know, your meal or diapers or something, hoping for the best, and you don't get it. And so and that goes to that list that Tally produced to say a quick fix, you know, and nobody's saying we don't want that quick fix for you because you're in trouble as it is. But when you gamble like that, you lose more than you've gained most of the time, unless you're one in a however much who happens to win. And so it keeps that poverty going for those families, unfortunately, when they just...
There was a lady in Kentucky a few weeks ago. She spent $5 on a scratch ticket, won $90,000, and she quit her job immediately.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, what? That's not
What do you think is going to happen with that $90,000?
It's going to go.
She's going to lose your job.
Taxes is like 45s. Right after tax.
So that most of the people who win the lottery become bankrupt shortly after. Their money is gone within a year sometimes of having received it. So
Tally, I have a question for you. May I ask Tally this question? Proverbs 13:22 says.
She done found Bible. This is good. I'm in trouble.
No. I had quoted it already. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous.
Are you calling gamblers sinners?
Is that why we won't take the money? Isn't that why we won't take the money? Because the act is a sin.
That sounds like a statement, not a question.
No. My question is, what does that mean if we say that? I mean, you know, when people put monies in the basket, we have to find out where it came from, right?
Not me.
If we knowingly know where it comes from, which we're not going to use it the way somebody else used it. You're using it for God's glory, and
your president said you have to reject it.
I didn't see the website.
All right. And again, I say that the Bible does not speak of gambling, right? And so where it just says the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. What's that issue?
When you say what's that issue, I'm not sure what you mean when it says the wealth of the wicked.
So my point is, they said we're not going to take monies from anyone who has gambled. You know that they have used the monies incorrectly, right? So I'm assuming it's got to be a sin. That's why the president will say that the church does not accept it, right? But I'm just saying that the Bible says that the wealth of a sinner is stored up.
Did you hear it go there, Novella?
The righteous are going to use the monies wisely, right?
Don't you take that preacher tone with me.
It comes from, so that's why I just wanted
I get your point. I mean, and that is the book of Proverbs. It's a book of, I mean, these books of poetic wisdom where things are enunciated poetically. For example, you know, when the same writer says money answers all things, doesn't. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is the poetic value of what is written there? You know, the wealth of the wicked stored up for the righteous fits right in with the passage that the meek will inherit the earth. In other words, at some point, there's a reversal. The first becomes last. But I'm not sure that means that the hitman for the mafia who just got $50,000 that I ought to get a cut of it. You know, I don't think it means that, you know. I sense, I mean, for example, all of you have limits. You know, Pastor Novella said, if a gambler comes in and gives some money, I'm going to take the money as a genuine offering, but I'm going to talk to him about how he got that money. But if somebody came in and says, I just murdered the banker down the street and I stole $50,000, I want you to take 20, you probably wouldn't take that.
Nobody would
I
tell
said
you
probably
that
because
either.
GP is thinking about it still. So, did he did he shoot him or did he hit him in the head? GP, did he suffer? You know, if he suffered, I'm only going to take 10. You know, but,
Well, no one would say that. So a realistic
oh,
scenario would be, who would come into your church? We're not even preaching. You know, most people, if they're trying to confess, they're going to a priest or something, right? No one's going to come in your church and say, Pastor, I just murdered someone and I robbed the bank and here I want to give this money. So you know you're not going to take that money.
right. So you're not going to take that money, right? So
Right.
one of the things that we've answered here is that there are degrees of acceptability, which is one of the questions that we asked. There's another consideration in gambling that has to be answered, and that is the Latin term cui bono, which is the expression who benefits. For example, if GP and I are sitting down playing a game of Uno, and I say, "Tell you what, man, I bet you $1 that I win the next game." I mean, and I'll lose $1, he wins $1, he loses $1, I win $1. That's not really robbery per se. But when you look at the lotteries and these other ones, the beneficiaries are not the people who are the winners. It's the people who own the game. The casinos are the winners. Who benefits from it?
Billionaires.
The gambling industry is based on the principle that a vast majority has to lose so that one or two might appear to win, but that in reality, the owners will win. So who benefits from it is something.
The house always wins.
The house always wins,
So good. I know we're wrapping up, but I wanted to share a quick little
wow, this hour went fast.
I know. So I was like, whoa, it's already over now. I don't know if I don't know if you guys have heard of this children's book, The Princess and Curdie.
No.
All right. So there was a young man named Curdie. He was out playing with a bow and arrow when impulsively he took aim at a bird. He dropped it and realized to his horror that it was the queen's pet pigeon. So his shoulders slumped. He went to the castle. He brought her the bird. He said, "I didn't mean any harm, ma'am." She responded, "You say you didn't mean any harm, but did you mean any good, Curdie?" And answered, "No." So the story ends. Remember then that whoever does not mean good is always in danger of harm. And I look at that as we look at this. When you're thinking about gambling, what good are you trying to accomplish by doing it? Wow. Because sometimes when you justify, I'm trying to do something good, it can actually lead to more harm when we look at the addictive side of it and what it can cause to you and your family. So I think if we keep that little story in our mind as we're gauging whether or not we should engage in certain things, that will help guide our thought process to help us make better.
Go ahead, Reverend Tasha. I mean, that'll preach, I think,
That was a good story.
Did you mean
that was a great story?
Did you mean any good?
Yeah.
When
I'm
you
asking
shot the bird, what was in your mind?
That's go ahead, sis. I tell you.
Amen.
Remember the story, The Princess and Curdie.
Wow. Well, I mean, this has been an extraordinary conversation. And last question to everybody as we close.
Okay.
You're in the nominating committee. Find out that your first elder, plays, buys lottery cards maybe once a month or once or twice, a year, nothing big, but that he does it. And you find out on the nominating committee, do you vote for him to be first elder or him or her to be first elder again?
I would have a conversation first.
Absolutely.
That's serious. I need to understand up here and in here what's happening to you. Because if we can figure out what's happening to you and we could talk through it and we're on a plan of getting healthy, then let's go. You go ahead right back into your first elder or whatever the case may be. For example, right? I know someone who is trying to overcome drinking and cigarette smoking. And so anytime I see them, our agreement is, if I see the cigarettes in your bag or I smell it on you, you have to give it to me. And don't tussle me. You have to give it to me, right? I want to make that person a deaconess. And I know they're not over smoking and drinking. but we've talked and I get it. And I see your hustle and your effort to get beyond. You're doing it less. You're on your way. So I think that pastoring isn't just everyone has to walk this straight grapevine. Pastoring is, let me hear what path you're on and let's keep marching together. And in the meantime, serve your Lord. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
So you certainly want to win the brother. You certainly want to win him over and talk to him, because that's a lack of his trust in God. And certainly he is to be an example to those that he will lead. And so you do want to have a conversation and give the person a chance to, recover and to seek God, because all of us got something going on. That we are constantly coming before God to overcome. And so that's why I said you want to give him that opportunity to overcome than just, striking them down.
Yeah, I agree. You got to have that conversation. Matthew 18, go to them and see exactly what's going on before you do anything.
I love this group of pastors. They say, look, we're going to talk to you about this 101, gambling at 150, gambling that you do 160. And every time you come in at 180, come into this church, you 300. I like this. I
do we want to put out the church addresses where gamblers can send their money? Or
this has been a great conversation, folks. Great conversation.
1943 Drew Street. And
listen, no judgment. Our listeners out there, no judgment.
Yeah.
Tax deductible donations.
Yeah, we hope that this has allowed all of our visitors, listeners and viewers to evaluate where you are on that topic and what decisions you would make, because it definitely is something that you want to be clear on where you stand.
Amen.
All right, guys, thank you for having this brave conversation. This is part of our financial literacy month, and so this falls right in line with that. And
next we may have to have a part 2 of this show as you are closing, because we didn't get to talk about what the church considers gambling when we have our little ticket things at church. The lotteries.
I want to say something about that. I know you said, because looking at the definition, a lot of times we understand that when we're putting that money in, it's being collected and donated to the church. So I don't even look at that as though I'm risking money. I look at it as a donation that I know I could lose. That's how and if you're giving it because you want to take home the big prize, then maybe you shouldn't participate.
It's never a big prize, big enough.
Exactly. So
I think Novella should have a conversation with you, Tasha, frankly.
There you go.
We all know it's church donation, because it's always like a fundraiser for the Pathfinders or for the church TV pew.
Right.
We know that's what it is. So remember the what was it? The bingo card that Tally had up there that said at Saint somebody church.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't a bingo card. That was
casino night.
Casino night.
Yeah.
So was casino night really a fundraiser to buy the new church van, or is it really, this is our weekly casino night so you can enjoy?
No, they're fundraisers typically.
Yeah, but I still think we should stay away from it because people
terminology
the church and then take it over to the real casino. So we have to be careful what we're introducing.
The style and the terminology.
Right. Yeah.
Down that rabbit hole. I agree. I wouldn't do
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so I guess if somebody drops a couple of lottery tickets in your offering plate, you're not going to scratch them off.
You're asking me straight?
You didn't buy them.
Talk about it.
You didn't buy them.
You didn't buy them.
I didn't buy them, and I will take
colleagues.
I will take the blessing, but I'm very firm about conversation, because I never want anyone to be that person who's on the struggle, in their heart or in their head. That's one of the things about my
on the stroll. Now that's a whole nother show right there.
Yeah, for me, that's a part of my core values. Please, Lord, let us all live at our maximum capacity. And so if I know somebody is on the struggle with that area, there's a conversation. To the point where I would say, I don't want to see lottery tickets here anymore, because I know it comes from you, because I want you to stop gambling. I would do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. Once again, a great conversation. And next week, I was saying, next week we're going to end our financial literacy month live
Live.
for those of us who will be able to participate. We'll be live. I should say with a live audience
because we're dead today.
We'll be at our communication conference next Sunday, and we're going to talk about finances. I mean, couples and finance. How do couples handle finances? Are things split? Are they, are they all together? All of those great conversations. So make sure you join us next Sunday. All right, guys. Thanks for being here and engaging us. And as I said, we'll see you next Sunday, same time, same place, because if it's Sunday,
it's time for you to roll the dice and take a chance on the UpSet.
The UpSet podcast.
I love it. Have a great week, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
God bless.